Welcome to Trans-European Division News, where today we're talking with Dragoslava Santrac, who is the managing editor of the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists. Dragoslava, welcome, and tell me something about the Encyclopedia and the work you do.
Yes, thank you very much, David. And it's a lovely morning, lovely space. And the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists is just a lovely resource. It's an online, freely accessible resource with almost 4,500 articles on Adventist missionaries, educators, evangelists, medical workers, also on Adventist institutions, their histories of schools, hospitals, church administrative units. Also, we have articles on the history of Adventism in countries. So if someone wants to learn, let's say, if you are listening from Poland or Romania or any other country in Europe, you can go there and see how Adventism started in your country. And also a wonderful selection of articles on the history of theology and ethics. For example, if you want to see the development of the doctrine on the investigative judgment, or clean and unclean food, the Sabbath, how these doctrines and theologies developed throughout our history. So, and it has over 13,000 of historical images and hundreds of videos. So it's really a rich resource, like a library at your fingertips.
At your fingertips, and for anyone who is interested.
Exactly.
Around the world, because it really is a global encyclopedia, right?
Yes.
From every nation, kindred, tongue and people.
Exactly, and we are very happy and blessed to have local fields, local authors writing about their own history. So we do have so many names of missionaries and pioneers we were not fully aware of in the past. Because we just did not know the local flavor and the local stories that now our editors are able to collect from, let's say, local church bulletins and church minutes and Adventist periodicals that are in local languages, never translated to English, for example, doing interviews with people who knew the people from the past and those events. And if we haven't captured all these stories now, with people dying, many of them would be lost.
So much of this is contemporary history as well as far back history.
Yes. It's the history from our early beginnings, from the Millerite movement and the early Millerites up to the most contemporary contexts and histories.
And why is history important to the Seventh-day Adventist Church?
Yes, well, have you ever had someone ask you, why are you a Seventh-day Adventist? Who are the Seventh-day Adventists? You know, and that's a historical question. Of course, we have a doctrinal side or biblical theological side of the reply that we give. This is what we believe as Seventh-day Adventists: Sabbath, sanctuary, Christ's second coming, of course, the gospel. But then there is also the historical heritage and the roots that we have. Who are we in our practice? Who are we in our mission outreach? What are our goals? What is our prophetic purpose on this earth? Who are Adventists as your next door neighbors? And this is what the encyclopedia and history provides in terms of answers and motivation, I would say.
It's said that in the 21st century, it's going to be the century where there's more migrant movement around the world than ever before. And of course, among those migrants will be Seventh-day Adventists. Yeah. So if I'm moving to a particular country, if I'm coming to Europe, for example, from the global south, I can find out about the church that I'm moving to in Norway or Sweden or in the UK or in Serbia in that encyclopedia.
Exactly.
And when you hear in the churches where you move to, we talk about the institutions like the Standard Press or Newbold, they may be meaningless to the new arrival, but you can find out about it in the encyclopedia.
Yes, and it's a good point of connection especially for our church administrators and evangelist preachers who traveled around the world. They can download a PDF of an article and get to know the church they are visiting, and making this connection by recalling some of the famous names in these people's history, and just showing that there is this global, universal brotherhood in our church, and that we are all united in one purpose, one faith, but also one history.
As you've been editor, you've had articles across your desk, stories of people that have crossed your desk, and missionaries, and we've been thinking about missionaries from Europe here at the conference. Which missionaries impress you, for example, that stand out?
Yes, there are so many. As I said, almost 4,500 articles, and most of them are biographies, and the most beloved category. And of course, there are articles on some famous missionaries everyone knows, like J.N. Andrews, the first missionary to Europe. But there are also some lesser known names, especially the names of missionary wives who worked side by side with their husbands and made great sacrifices, but they are always known as Mrs. Let's say Spencer Maxwell. But she was Constance Mary Maxwell, who really sacrificed and did a lot of work. So I love these not so well-known and famous stories, but they are so rich. And maybe I can share a few points from Melvin and May Oss, Norwegian Adventist missionaries to India, where both May and Melvin worked side by side. May, she opened a small health clinic and also led a girls' school, while Melvin, he did public evangelism and led the Adventist Training Center.
Which country did they go to?
They went to India.
Okay.
And what's very interesting is that they got married in the early 1920s, 1923, if I recall the year, and immediately went to the mission field. So I like to think that their honeymoon was in the mission field.
By boat?
Yes, by boat.
Not by plane, yeah, in the 20s and 30s, yeah.
Yes. And then taking a horse or donkey with a cart to travel to their little place where they will be stationed somewhere close to Bombay. They ministered to over 200 villages. So their first priority was to learn the local language. And they were quite gifted. And I believe that even though we don't see the experience of the Pentecost, when the apostles almost instantaneously got the gift of other languages, yes, I believe that God blessed our pioneers because they were quite quick in learning the local languages to connect with people and preach. So.
And of course there was sacrifice.
Yes.
Some of these contracts, if I can call them that, would go for 7 to 10 years. And you'd get a very brief furlough in the middle. Quite different from today, actually.
Exactly, and many of our pioneers suffered from malnutrition because they had a hard time adjusting to local food, and the local bacteria and germs. Every place has its own milieu of germs and water. So many suffered from malaria. A Swedish missionary, Hanna Bergstrom, she had a miscarriage and was never able, while in Cameroon with her husband Ruben, and were never able to have a child after that. Suffered from malaria quite in several times. So there was a lot of sacrifice. No air-conditioned homes, no markets to go and buy typical home groceries. It was a complete uprooting from everything you've known, family, friends, church members, and going to places where sometimes were no Christians at all, or very little, small Christian communities, often non-Adventists. So they were really pioneering missionaries in so many ways.
We said at the conference here a few days ago, to be Adventist means to be a missionary, whether it's abroad or at home. What are your reflections on the conference, and have you any wisdom on the way forward for Adventism in Europe?
I truly enjoyed the conference and all the presentations from the different approaches to Adventist mission: philosophical, contemporary, biblical, historical, and very inspiring to see the pastors and church administrators from across the Europe coming together and having a genuine fellowship, and this a genuine desire to be God's channels of blessings for the people around us. And this is one of the takeaways I will have from this conference, that Adventist mission is not so much about seeing other people as targets for evangelism, but rather as God's intended recipients of His blessings.
Let's just say that again. God's intended recipients of His blessings.
Yes, and this conference focused very much on that. How can we be God's blessing to the people around us? And at the same time, conveying this prophetic message that God has given to the Seventh-day Adventist movement.
So what we are sharing requires quite a mind shift, is that right?
Yes.
And that takes time, it takes patience,
Yes.
and hopefully the working of the Holy Spirit transforming us to get to that point.
Yes. And our missionary stories, even though they did not put it in these quite academic and scholarly language as we did at the conference, that's exactly what they were doing. They understood that as Jesus mingled with people, among them, desiring their good, that was their first priority. Learning the language, eating with people, talking with people, being there when they are sick, comforting them when they lose someone, and through that, reflecting God's love and salvation in Jesus, and calling them to follow Christ.
So with a humble spirit, we're almost saying this is a more Christ-centered approach to mission.
Yes. We are joining the mission that God is already doing in the world, has been doing since creation. So it is not so much our mission, something that we do for God. It is us making ourselves available to God to use us in His mission, to bless the world, to hug the world, to call the world back to Him, back home, back to that safety and refuge from all these atrocities and evils in the world that we all feel as humanity. We all share in this suffering that's been happening in different ways. Yes.
Dragoslava, thank you for sharing with Trans-European Division News. But before we say goodbye, we need to share the website link for the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists.
Yes, so I invite your viewers to go to encyclopedia.adventist.org. Again, it is encyclopedia.adventist.org. Go to this website, read the story from your country and many others from around the world. Be educated, but also be uplifted and inspired, because the time is short. If anything I learned from the encyclopedia is that time is short, life is transient. And I recall one stanza from Melvin Oss that I just mentioned. He was also a poet, and he wrote, "Guard well each passing hour, time's sand is running low. lay hold of God's great power and do the best you know. And that's what they did. And by the grace of God, we pray that we do the same.
Dragoslava, thank you for talking with Trans-European Division News. Every blessing to you in your ministry, and thank you for watching today.